Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Srimad Bhagavatam reading Yajna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayat Mudirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. So we are reading today starting Canto 5, Chapter 2 from verse 7. And starting now, all of these chapters have got chapter summary, but we are not reading chapter summary. We are just going to read the verses. So starting from chapter 2, the chapter is entitled The Activities of Maharaj Agnidhra. And dear devotees, when you're reading, can you please read the verse numbers as well? So verse 7. The prince mistakenly addressed the Apsara. O best of saintly persons, who are you? Why are you on this hill? And what do you want to do? Are you one of the illusory potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? You seem to be carrying two bows without strings. What is the reason you carry these bows? Is it for some purpose of your own or for the sake of a friend? Perhaps you carry them to kill the mad animals in this forest. Text 8. Then Agnidhra observed the glancing eyes of Purvachitti and said, My dear friend, you have two very powerful arrows, namely your glancing eyes. Those arrows have feathers like the petals of a lotus flower. Although they have no shafts, they are very beautiful and they have very sharp piercing points. They appear very peaceful and thus it seems that they will not be shot at anyone. You must be loitering in this forest to shoot these arrows at someone, but I cannot understand whom. My intelligence is dull and I cannot combat you. Indeed, no one can equal you in prowess, and therefore I pray that your prowess will be for my good fortune. Text 9. Seeing the bumblebees following Purvachitti, Maharaj Agnidhra said, My dear Lord, the bumblebees surrounding your body are like disciples surrounding your worshipable self. They're incessantly chanting the mantras of the Samaveda and the Upanishads, thus offering prayers to you. Just as great sages resort to the branches of Vedic literatures, the bumblebees are enjoying the showers of flowers falling from your hair. Text 10. O Brahmana, I can simply hear the tinkling of your ankle bells. Within those bells, kitiri birds seem to be chirping among themselves. Although I do not see their forms, I can hear how they are chirping. When I look at your beautiful circular hips, I see they are the lovely color of kadamba flowers, and your waist is encircled by a belt of burning cinders. Indeed, you seem to have forgotten to dress yourself. Text 11. Agnidhra then praised Purvachitti's raised breasts. He said, My dear Brahmana, your waist is very thin, yet with great difficulty you are carefully carrying two horns to which my eyes have become attracted. What is filling those two beautiful horns? You seem to have spread fragrant red powder upon them, powder that is like the rising morning sun. O most fortunate one, I beg to inquire where you have forgotten this fragrant powder that is perfuming my ashram, my place of residence. Text 12. O best friend, will you kindly show me the place where you reside? I cannot imagine how the residents of that place have gotten such wonderful bodily features as your raised breasts, which agitate the minds and eyes of a person like me who sees them. Judging by the sweet speech and kind smiles of those residents, I think their mouths must contain nectar. Text 13. My dear friend, what do you eat to maintain your body? Because you're chewing betel, a pleasing scent is emanating from your mouth. This proves that you always eat the remnants of food offered to Vishnu. Indeed, you must also be an expansion of Lord Vishnu's body. Your face is as beautiful as a pleasing lake. Your jeweled earrings resemble two brilliant sharks with unblinking eyes like those of Vishnu, and your own eyes resemble two restless fish. Simultaneously, therefore, two sharks and two restless fish are swimming in the lake of your face. Besides them, the white rows of your teeth seem like rows of very beautiful swans in the water, and your scattered hair resembles swarms of bumblebees following the beauty of your face. Text 14. My mind is already restless, and by playing with the ball, moving it all about with your lotus like palm, you're also agitating my eyes. Your curling black hair is now scattered, but you're not attentive to arranging it. Are you not going to arrange it? Like a man attached to women, the most cunning wind is trying to take off your lower garment. Are you not mindful of it? Text 15. O best among those performing austerities, where did you get this wonderful beauty that dismantles the austerities performed by others? Where have you learned this art? What austerity have you undergone to achieve this beauty, my dear friend? I desire that you join me to perform austerity and penance, for it may be that the creator of the universe, Lord Brahma, being pleased with me, has sent you to become my wife. 16. Lord Brahma, who is worshipped by the Brahmanas, has very mercifully given you to me, and that's why I have met you. I do not want to give up your company, for my mind and eyes are fixed upon you, and cannot be drawn away. O woman with beautiful raised breasts, I am your follower. You may take me wherever you like, and your friends may also follow me. Follow me. Text 17. Shukdev Goswami continued. Maharaj Agnidra, whose intelligence was like that of a demigod, knew the art of flattering women to win them to his side. He therefore pleased that celestial girl with his lusty words and gained her favor. 18. Attracted by the intelligence, learning, youth, beauty, behavior, opulence, and magnanimity of Agnidra, the king of Jambudweep and master of all heroes, Purvachitti, lived with him for many thousands of years and luxuriously enjoyed both worldly and heavenly happiness. In 19, in the womb of Purvachitti, Maharaj Agnidra, the best of kings, begot 9 sons named Nabhi, Kimpurusha, Harivarsha, Ilavrita, Ramyaka, Hiranmaya, Kuru, Bhadrashva, and Ketumala. 20. Purvachitti gave birth to these 9 sons, one each year, but after they grew up, she left them at home and again approached Lord Brahma to worship him. 21. Because of drinking the breast milk of their mother, the 9 sons of Agnidra naturally had strong, well-built bodies. Their father gave them each a kingdom in a different part of Jambudweep. The kingdoms were named according to the names of the sons. Thus, the sons of Agnidra ruled the kingdoms they received from their father. 22. After Purvachitti's departure, King Agnidra, his lusty desires not at all satisfied, always thought of her. Therefore, in accordance with the Vedic injunctions, the king, after his death, was promoted to the same planet as his celestial wife. That planet, which is called Pitriloka, is where the Pitas, the forefathers, live in great delight. Text 23. After the departure of their father, the 9 brothers married the 9 daughters of Meru, named Neru Devi, Pratirupa, Ugra Damstri, Lata, Ramya, Shama, Nari, Bhadra, and Devaviti. Thus ends the translation of Canto 5, Chapter 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Next, Damodar, are you ready? You can read Chapter 3 and 4.
Yes, I'm ready. Okay. Chapter 3. Rishabdev's appearance in the womb of Meru Devi, the wife of King Nabhi. Oh, I'm sorry. Are we reading the... Okay, we're not.
No, we're not reading.
All right. Text 1. Shukadev Goswami continued to speak. Maharaj Nabhi, the son of Agnidra, wished to have sons, and therefore he attentively began to offer prayers and worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, the master and enjoyer of all sacrifices. Maharaj Nabhi's wife, Meru Devi, who had not given birth to any children at that time, also worshipped Lord Vishnu, along with her husband. Text 2. In the performance of a sacrifice, there are 7 transcendental means to obtain the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 1. By sacrificing valuable things or eatables. By acting in terms of place. By acting in terms of time. By offering hymns. By going through the priest. By offering gifts to the priests. And by observing the regulative principles. However, one cannot always obtain the Supreme Lord through this paraphernalia. Nonetheless, the Lord is affectionate to his devotee. Therefore, when Maharaj Nabi, who was a devotee, worshipped and offered prayers to the Lord with great faith and devotion, and with a pure, uncontaminated mind, superficially performing some yajna in the line of pravargya, the kind Supreme Personality of Godhead, due to his affection for his devotees, appeared before King Nabi in his unconquerable and captivating form with 4 hands. In this way, to fulfill the desire of his devotee, the Supreme Personality of Godhead manifested himself in his beautiful body before his devotee. This body pleases the mind and eyes of the devotees. Text 3. Lord Vishnu appeared before King Nabi with 4 arms. He was very bright, and he appeared to be the best of all personalities. Around the lower portion of his body, he wore a yellow silken garment. On his chest was the mark of Srivatsa, which always displays beauty. He carried a conch shell, lotus flower, disc, and club, and he wore a garland of forest flowers and the Kaustuba gem. He was beautifully decorated with a helmet, earrings, bangles, belt, pearl necklace, armlets, ankle bells, and other bodily ornaments, bedecked with radiant jewels. Seeing the Lord present before them, King Nabi and his priests and associates felt just like poor people who have suddenly attained great riches. They received the Lord and respectfully bent their heads and offered him things in worship. Texts 4 and 5. The priests began to offer prayers to the Lord, saying, "O most worshipable one, we are simply your servants. Although you are full in yourself, please, out of your causeless mercy, accept a little service from us, your eternal servants. We are not actually aware of your transcendental form, but we can simply offer our respectful obeisances again and again, as instructed by the Vedic literatures and authorized acharyas. Materialistic living entities are very much attracted to the modes of material nature, and therefore they are never perfect. But you are above the jurisdiction of all material conceptions. Your name, form, and qualities are all transcendental and beyond the conception of experimental knowledge. Indeed, who can conceive of you? In the material world, we can perceive only material names and qualities. We have no other power than to offer our respectful obeisances and prayers unto you, the transcendental person. The chanting of your auspicious transcendental qualities will wipe out the sins of all mankind. That is the most auspicious activity for us, and we can thus partially understand your supernatural position." Text 6. O Supreme Lord, you are full in every respect. You are certainly very satisfied when your devotees offer you prayers with faltering voices, and in ecstasy bring you tulsi leaves, water, twigs, bearing new leaves and newly grown grass. This surely makes you satisfied. Text 7. We have engaged in your worship with many things and have offered sacrifices unto you, but we think that there is no need for so many arrangements to please your lordship. Text 8. All of life's goals and opulences are directly, self-sufficiently, unceasingly, and unlimitedly increasing in you at every moment. Indeed, you are unlimited enjoyment and blissful existence itself. As far as we are concerned, O Lord, we are always after material enjoyment. You do not need all these sacrificial arrangements, but they are meant for us so that we may be benedicted by your lordship. All these sacrifices are performed for our fruitive results, and they are not actually needed by you. Text 9. O Lord of Lords, we are completely ignorant of the execution of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, the process of liberation, because we do not actually know the goal of life. You have personally appeared before us like a person soliciting worship, but actually you are present here just so we can see you. You have come out of your abundant and causeless mercy in order to serve our purpose, our interest, and give us the benefit of your personal glory called Apavarga, liberation. You have come, although you are not properly worshipped by us due to our ignorance. Text 10. O most worshipable of all, you are the best of all benefactors, and your appearance at saintly King Nabi's sacrificial arena is meant for our benediction. Because you have been seen by us, you have bestowed upon us the most valuable benediction. Text 11. Dear Lord, all the great sages who are thoughtful and saintly persons incessantly recount your spiritual qualities. These sages have already burned up all the unlimited dirty things, and by the fire of knowledge, strengthened their detachment from the material world. Thus they have attained your qualities and are self-satisfied. Yet even for those who feel spiritual bliss in chanting your attributes, your personal presence is very rare. Text 12. Dear Lord, we may not be able to remember your name, form, and qualities due to stumbling, hunger, falling down, yawning, or being in a miserable, diseased condition at the time of death, when there is a high fever. We therefore pray unto you, O Lord, for you are very affectionate to your devotees. Please help us remember you and utter your holy names, attributes, and activities, which can dispel all the reactions of our sinful lives. Text 13. Dear Lord, here is the great King Nabi, whose ultimate goal in life is to have a son like you. Your Lordship, his position is like that of a person approaching a very rich man and begging for a little grain. Maharaj Nabi is so desirous of having a son that he is worshipping you for a son, although you can offer him any exalted position, including elevation to the heavenly planets or liberation back to Godhead. Text 14. Dear Lord, unless one worships the lotus feet of great devotees, one will be conquered by the illusory energy, and his intelligence will be bewildered. Indeed, who has not been carried away by the waves of material enjoyment, which are like poison? Your illusory energy is unconquerable. No one can see the path of this material energy or tell how it is working. Text 15. O Lord, you perform many wonderful activities. Our only aim was to acquire a son by performing this great sacrifice. Therefore, our intelligence is not very sharp. We are not experienced in ascertaining life's goal. By inviting you to this negligible sacrifice for some material motive, we have certainly committed a great offense at your lotus feet. Therefore, O Lord of Lords, please excuse our offense because of your causeless mercy and equal mind. Text 16. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, the priests, who were even worshipped by King Nabi, the emperor of Bharatvarsha, offered prayers in prose. Generally, they were in poetry, and bowed down at the Lord's lotus feet. The Lord of Lords, the ruler of the demigods, was very pleased with them, and he began to speak as follows. Text 17. The Supreme Personality of Godhead replied, O great sages, I am certainly very pleased with your prayers. You are all truthful. You have prayed for the benediction of a son like me for King Nabi. But this is very difficult to obtain. Since I am the Supreme Person without a second, and since no one is equal to me, another personality like me is not possible to find. In any case, because you are all qualified brahmanas, your vibrations should not prove untrue. I consider the brahmanas who are well qualified with Brahminical qualities to be as good as my own mouth. Text 18. Since I cannot find anyone equal to me, I shall personally expand myself into a plenary portion, and thus advent myself in the womb of Meru Devi, the wife of Maharaj Nabi, the son of Agnidra. Yeah. Text 19. Shukadev Goswami continued, after saying this, the Lord disappeared. The wife of King Nabi, Queen Merudevi, was sitting by the side of her husband, and consequently she could hear everything the Supreme Lord had spoken. Text 20. O Vishnudatta, Parikshit Maharaj, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was pleased by the great sages at that sacrifice. Consequently, the Lord decided to personally exhibit the method of executing religious principles, as observed by brahmacharis, sannyasis, vanaprasthas, and grihastas engaged in rituals, and also satisfy Maharaj Nabi's desire. Consequently, he appeared as the son of Merudevi in his original spiritual form, which is above the modes of material nature. And let's see. All right. Yep. Go ahead.
Continuing chapter 4.
Yep. Chapter 4. The characteristics of Rishabdev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 1. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, as soon as the Lord was born as the son of Maharaj Nabi, he manifested symptoms of the Supreme Lord, such as marks on the bottom of his feet, the flag, thunderbolt, etc. This son was equal to everyone and very peaceful. He could control his senses and his mind, and, possessing all opulence, he did not hanker for material enjoyment. Endowed with all these attributes, the son of Maharaj Nabi became more powerful day after day. Due to this, the citizens, learned brahmanas, demigods, and ministers wanted Rishabdev to be appointed ruler of the earth. Text 2. When the son of Maharaj Nabi became visible, he evinced all good qualities described by the great poets, namely a well-built body with all the symptoms of the Godhead, prowess, strength, beauty, name, fame, influence, and enthusiasm. When the father, Maharaj Nabi, saw all these qualities, he thought his son to be the best of human beings, or the supreme being. Therefore, he gave him the name Rishabha. Text 3. Indra, the king of heaven, who is very materially opulent, became envious of King Rishabdev. Consequently, he stopped pouring water on the planet known as Varsha. At that time, the Supreme Lord, Rishabdev, the master of all mystic power, understood King Indra's purpose and smiled a little. Then, by his own prowess, through Yoga Maya, his internal potency, he profusely poured water upon his own place, which was known as Ajanabha. Text 4. Due to getting a perfect son according to his desire, King Nabi was always overwhelmed with transcendental bliss and was very affectionate to his son. It was with ecstasy and a faltering voice that he addressed him, "My dear son, my darling." This mentality was brought about by Yoga Maya, whereby he accepted the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Father, as his own son. Out of his supreme goodwill, the Lord became his son and dealt with everyone as if he were an ordinary human being. Thus King Nabi began to raise his transcendental son with great affection, and he was overwhelmed with transcendental bliss, joy, and devotion. Text 5. King Nabi understood that his son Rishabdev was very popular amongst the citizens and among government officers and ministers. Understanding the popularity of his son, Maharaj Nabi enthroned him as the emperor of the world to give protection to the general populace in terms of the Vedic religious system. To do this, he entrusted him into the hands of learned brahmanas, who would guide him in administrating the government. Then Maharaj Nabi and his wife, Merudevi, went to Bhadrak Ashram in the Himalaya mountains, where the king engaged himself very expertly in austerities and penances with great jubilation. In full samadhi, he worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, who is Krishna in his plenary expansion. By doing so, in course of time, Maharaj Nabi was elevated to the spiritual world known as Vaikuntha. Text 6. O Maharaj Parikshit, to glorify Maharaj Nabi, the old sages composed 2 verses. One of them is this: who can attain the perfection of Maharaj Nabi? Who can attain his activities? Because of his devotional service, the Supreme Personality of Godhead agreed to become his son. Text 7. The second prayer is this: who is a better worshipper of Brahmanas than Maharaj Nabi? Because he worshipped the qualified Brahmanas to their full satisfaction, the Brahmanas, by their Brahminical prowess, showed Maharaj Nabi the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, in person. Text 8. After Nabi Maharaj departed for Bhadrak Ashram, the Supreme Lord Rishabdev understood that his kingdom was his field of activities. He therefore showed himself as an example and taught the duties of a householder by first accepting brahmacharya under the direction of spiritual masters. He also went to live at the spiritual master's place, Gurukul. After his education was finished, he gave gifts, or Guru Dakshina, to his spiritual masters, and then accepted the life of a householder. He took a wife named Jayanti, and begot 100 sons who were as powerful and qualified as he himself. His wife Jayanti had been offered to him by Indra, the king of heaven. Rishabdev and Jayanti performed householder life in an exemplary way, carrying out ritualistic activities ordained by the Shruti and Smriti Shastra. Text 9. Of Rishabdev's 100 sons, the eldest, named Bharat, was a great, exalted devotee, qualified with the best attributes. In his honor, this planet has become known as Bharatvarsha. Text 10. Following Bharat, there were 99 other sons. Among these were 9 elderly sons, named Kushavarta, Ilavarta, Brahmavarta, Malaya, Ketu, Bhadrasena, Indrasprik, Vidarbha, and Kikata. Texts 11 and 12. In addition to these sons were Kavi, Havi, Antariksha, Prabhuda, Pipalayana, Avirhotra, Drumila, Kamasa, and Karabhajana. These were all very exalted, advanced devotees and authorized preachers of Srimad Bhagavatam. These devotees were glorified due to their strong devotion to Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, they were very exalted. To satisfy the mind perfectly, I, Shukadev Goswami, shall hereafter describe the characteristics of these 9 devotees when I discuss the conversation between Narada and Vasudeva. Text 13. In addition to these 19 sons mentioned above, there were 81 younger ones, all born of Rishabdev and Jayanti. According to the order of their father, they became well-cultured, well-behaved, very pure in their activities, and expert in Vedic knowledge and the performance of Vedic rituals. Thus, they all became perfectly qualified Brahmanas. Text 14. Being an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Rishabdev was fully independent because his form was spiritual, eternal, and full of transcendental bliss. He eternally had nothing to do with the 4 principles of material misery: birth, death, old age, and disease. Nor was he materially attached. He was always equipoised, and he saw everyone on the same level. He was unhappy to see others unhappy, and he was the well-wisher of all living entities. Although he was a perfect personality, the Supreme Lord, and controller of all, he nonetheless acted as if he were an ordinary conditioned soul. Therefore, he strictly followed the principles of Varnashram Dharma and acted accordingly. In due course of time, the principles of Varnashram Dharma had become neglected. Therefore, through his personal characteristics and behavior, he taught the ignorant public how to perform duties within the Varnashram Dharma. In this way, he regulated the general populace and householder life, enabling them to develop religion and economic well-being, and to attain reputations, sons and daughters, material pleasure, and finally, eternal life. By his instructions, he showed how people could remain householders and at the same time become perfect by following the principles of Varnashram Dharma. Text 15. Whatever action is performed by a great man, common men follow. Text 16. Although Lord Rishabdev knew everything about confidential Vedic knowledge, which includes information about all types of occupational duties, he still maintained himself as a Kshatriya and followed the instructions of the Brahmanas as they related to mind control, sense control, tolerance, and so forth. Thus, he ruled the people according to the system of Varnashram Dharma, which enjoins that the Brahmanas instruct the Kshatriyas and the Kshatriyas administer to the state through the Vaishyas and Shudras. Text 17. Lord Rishabdev performed all kinds of sacrifices 100 times, according to the instructions of the Vedic literatures. Thus, he satisfied Lord Vishnu in every respect. All the rituals were enriched by first-class ingredients. They were executed in holy places according to the proper time by priests who were all young and faithful. In this way, Lord Vishnu was worshipped, and the prasad was offered to all the demigods. Thus, the functions and festivals were all successful. Text 18. No one likes to possess anything that is like a will-o'-the-wisp or a flower in the sky, for everyone knows very well that such things do not exist. When Lord Rishabdev ruled this planet of Bharatvarsha, even common men did not want to ask for anything, at any time or by any means. No one ever asked for a will-o'-the-wisp. In other words, everyone was completely satisfied, and therefore there was no chance of anyone's asking for anything. The people were absorbed in great affection for the king. Since this affection was always expanding, they were not inclined to ask for anything. Text 19. Once, while touring the world, Lord Rishabdev, the Supreme Lord, reached a place known as Brahmavarta. There was a great conference of learned Brahmanas at that place, and all the king's sons attentively heard the instructions of the Brahmanas there. At that assembly, within the hearing of the citizens, Rishabdev instructed his sons, although they were already very well behaved, devoted, and qualified. He instructed them so that in the future they could rule the world very perfectly. Thus, he spoke as follows.
Thank you, Damodar. Mother Malati, you would read chapter 5. Thank you.
Chapter 5, Lord Rishabdev's teachings to his sons. Text 1. Lord Rishabdev told his sons, "My dear boys, all the living entities who have accepted material bodies in this world, one who has been awarded this human form should not work hard day and night simply for sense gratification, which is available even for dogs and hogs that eat stool. One should engage in penance and austerity to attain the divine position of devotional service. By such activity, one's heart is purified, and when one attains this position, he attains eternal, blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness and which continues forever." Text 2. One can attain the path of liberation from material bondage only by rendering service to highly advanced spiritual personalities. These personalities are impersonalists and devotees. Whether one wants to merge into the Lord's existence or wants to associate with the personality of Godhead, one should render service to the Mahatmas. For those who are not interested in such activities, who associate with people fond of women and sex, the path to hell is wide open. The Mahatmas are equipoised. They do not see any difference between one living entity and another. They are very peaceful and are fully engaged in devotional service. They are devoid of anger and they work for the benefit of everyone. They do not behave in any abominable way. Such people are known as Mahatmas. 3. Those who are interested in reviving Krishna consciousness and increasing their love of Godhead do not like to do anything that is not related to Krishna. They are not interested in mingling with people who are busy maintaining their bodies, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. They are not attached to their homes, although they may be householders. Nor are they attached to wives, children, friends, or wealth. At the same time, they are not indifferent to the execution of their duties. Such people are interested in collecting only enough money to keep the body and soul together. 4. When a person considers sense gratification the aim of life, he certainly becomes mad after materialistic living and engages in all kinds of sinful activities. He does not know that due to his past misdeeds, he has already received a body which, although temporary, is the cause of his misery. Actually, the living entity should not have taken on a material body, but he has been awarded the material body for sense gratification. Therefore, I think it is not befitting an intelligent man to involve himself again in the activities of sense gratification by which he perpetually gets material bodies one after another. 5. As long as one does not inquire about the spiritual values of life, one is defeated and subjected to miseries arising from ignorance. Be it sinful or pious, karma has its resultant actions. If a person is engaged in any kind of karma, his mind is called karmatmaka, colored with fruitive activities. As long as the mind is impure, consciousness is unclear, and as long as one is absorbed in fruitive activity, he has to accept a material body. Text 6. When the living entity is covered by the mode of ignorance, he does not understand the individual living being and the supreme living being, and his mind is subjugated by fruitive activities. Therefore, until one has love for Lord Vasudeva, who is none other than myself, he is certainly not delivered from having to accept a material body again and again. Text 7. Even though one may be very learned and wise, he is mad if he does not understand that the endeavor for sense gratification is a useless waste of time. Being forgetful of his own interest, he tries to be happy in the material world, centering his interests around his home, which is based on sexual intercourse and which brings him all kinds of material miseries. In this way, one is no better than a foolish animal. Text 8. The attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusions and thinks in terms of I and mine. Text 9. When the strong knot of the heart of a person implicated in material life due to the results of past action is slackened, One turns away from his attachment to home, wife, and children. In this way, one gives up the basic principles of illusion, I and mine, and becomes liberated. Thus, one goes to the transcendental world. Text 10 through 13. O my sons, you should accept a highly elevated Paramahansa, a spiritually advanced spiritual master. In this way, you should place your faith and love in me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You should detest sense gratification and tolerate the dualities of pleasure and pain, which are like the seasonal changes of summer and winter. Try to realize the miserable condition of living entities who are miserable even in the higher planetary systems. Philosophically inquire about the truth, then undergo all kinds of austerities and penances for the sake of devotional service. Give up the endeavor for sense enjoyment and engage in the service of the Lord. Listen to discussions about the Supreme Personality of Godhead and always associate with devotees. Chant about and glorify the Supreme Lord and look upon everyone equally on the spiritual platform. Give up enmity and subdue anger and lamentation. Abandon identifying the self with the body and the home and practice reading the revealed scriptures. Live in a secluded place and practice the process by which you can completely control your life, air, mind, and senses. Have full faith in the revealed scriptures, the Vedic literatures, and always observe celibacy. Perform your prescribed duties and avoid unnecessary talks. Always thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, acquire knowledge from the right source. Thus, practicing bhakti yoga, you will patiently and enthusiastically be elevated in knowledge and will be able to give up the false ego. Text 14. As I have advised you, my dear sons, you should act accordingly. Be very careful. By these means, you will be freed from the ignorance of the desire for fruitive activities, and the knot of bondage in the heart will be completely severed. For further advancement, you should also give up the means. That is, you should not become attached to the process of liberation itself. If one is serious about going back home, back to Godhead, he must consider the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the summum bonum, and the chief aim of life. If he is a father instructing his sons, a spiritual master instructing his disciples, or a king instructing his citizens, he must instruct them as I have advised. Without being angry, he should continue giving instructions, even if his disciple, son, or citizen is sometimes unable to follow his order. Ignorant people who engage in pious and impious activities should be engaged in devotional service by all means. They should always avoid fruitive activities. If one puts into the bondage of karmic activities his disciple, son, or citizen who is bereft of transcendental vision, how will one profit? It is like leading a blind man to a dark well and causing him to fall in. Text 16. Due to ignorance, the materialistic person does not know anything about his real self-interest, the auspicious path in life. He is simply bound to material enjoyment by lusty desires, and all his plans are made for this purpose. For temporary sense gratification, such a person creates a society of envy, and due to this mentality, he plunges into the ocean of suffering. Such a foolish person does not even know about this. Text 17. If someone is ignorant and addicted to the path of samsara, how can one who is actually learned and merciful and advanced in spiritual knowledge engage him in fruitive activities and thus further entangle him in material existence? If a blind man is walking down the wrong path, How can a gentleman allow him to continue on his way to danger? How can he approve this method? No wise or kind man can allow this. One who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. 19. My transcendental body, Satchitananda Vigraha, looks exactly like a human form, but it is not a material human body. It is inconceivable. I am not forced by nature to accept a particular type of body. I take on a body by my own sweet will. My heart is also spiritual, and I always think of the welfare of my devotees. Therefore, within my heart can be found the process of devotional service, which is meant for the devotees. Far from my heart have I abandoned irreligion, adharma, and non-devotional activities. They do not appeal to me. Due to all these transcendental qualities, people generally pray to me as Rishabhadev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the best of all living entities. Text 20. My dear boys, you are all born of my heart, which is the seat of all spiritual qualities. Therefore, you should not be like materialistic and envious men. You should accept your eldest brother, Bharata, who is exalted in devotional service. If you engage yourselves in Bharata's service, your service to him will include my service, and you will rule the citizens automatically. Text 21 and 22. Of the two energies manifest, spirit and dull matter, beings possessing living force, vegetables, grass, trees, and plants are superior to dull matter, stone, earth, etc. Superior to non-moving plants and vegetables are worms and snakes, which can move. Superior to worms and snakes are animals that have developed intelligence. Superior to animals are human beings. And superior to human beings are ghosts because they have no material bodies. Superior to ghosts are the Gandharvas, and superior to them are the Siddhas. Superior to the Siddhas are the Kinnaras, and superior to them are the Asuras. Superior to the Asuras are the demigods, and of the demigods, Indra, the king of heaven, is supreme. Superior to Indra are the direct sons of Lord Brahma, the sons like King Daksha, and supreme among Brahma's sons is Lord Shiva. Since Lord Shiva is the son of Lord Brahma, Brahma is considered superior. But Brahma is also subordinate to me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because I am inclined to the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas are best of all. Text 23. O respectful Brahmanas, as far as I am concerned, no one was equal or superior to the Brahmanas in this world. I do not find anyone comparable to them. When people know my motive after performing rituals according to the Vedic principles, they offer to me with faith and love through the mouth of a Brahmana. When food is thus offered unto me, I eat it with full satisfaction. Indeed, I derive more pleasure from food offered in that way than from the food offered in the sacrificial fire. Text 24. The Vedas are my eternal transcendental sound incarnation. Therefore, the Vedas are Sabda Brahma. In this world, the Brahmanas thoroughly study all the Vedas, and because they assimilate the Vedic conclusions, they are also to be considered the Vedas personified. The Brahmanas are situated in the supreme transcendental mode of nature, Sattva Gun. Because of this, they are fixed in mind control, Sama, and sense control, Dhamma, and truthfulness, Satya. They describe the Vedas in their original sense, and out of mercy, Anugraha, they preach the purpose of the Vedas to all conditioned souls. They practice penance, tapasya, and tolerance, titiksha, and they realized the position of the living entity and the Supreme Lord Anubhava. These are the 8 qualifications of the Brahmanas. Therefore, amongst all living entities, no one is superior to the Brahmanas. I am fully opulent, almighty, and superior to Lord Brahma and Indra, the king of the heavenly planets. I am also the bestower of all happiness obtained in the heavenly kingdom and by liberation. Nevertheless, the Brahmanas do not seek material comforts from me. They are very pure and do not want to possess anything. They simply engage in my devotional service. What is the need of their asking for material benefits from anyone else? Text 26. My dear sons, you should not envy any living entity, be he moving or non-moving. Knowing that I am situated in them, you should offer respects to all of them at every moment. In this way, you offer respect to me. Text 27. The true activity of the sense organs, mind, sight, words, and all the knowledge gathering and working senses is to engage fully in my service. Unless his senses are thus engaged, a living entity cannot think of getting out of the great entanglement of material existence, which is exactly like Yamaraj's stringent rope. Text 28. Sukadeva Goswami said, thus the great well-wisher of everyone, the Supreme Lord Rishabhadev instructed his own sons. Although they were perfectly educated and cultured, he instructed them just to set an example of how a father should instruct his sons before retiring from family life. Sannyasis who are no longer bound by fruitive activities and who have taken to devotional service after all their material desires have been vanquished also learn by these instructions. Lord Rishabhadev instructed his 100 sons, of whom the eldest, Bharata, was a very advanced devotee and a follower of Vaishnavas. In order to rule the whole world, the Lord enthroned his eldest son on the royal seat. Thereafter, although still at home, Lord Rishabhadev lived like a madman, naked and with disheveled hair. Then the Lord took the sacrificial fire within himself, and he left Brahma Varta to tour the whole world. After accepting the feature of Avadut, a great saintly person without material cares, Lord Rishabhadev passed through the human society like a blind, deaf, and dumb man, an idle stone, a ghost, or a madman. Although people called him such names, he remained silent and did not speak to anyone. 30. Rishabhadev began to tour through the cities, villages, mines, countrysides, valleys, gardens, material camps, cow pens, and the homes of cowherdmen, transient hotels, hills, forests, and hermitages. Wherever he traveled, all bad elements surrounded him, just as flies surrounded the body of an elephant coming from a forest. He was always being threatened, beaten, urinated upon, and sat upon. Sometimes people threw stones, stool, and dust at him, and sometimes people passed foul air before him. Thus people called him many bad names and gave him a great deal of trouble. But he did not care about this, for he understood that the body is simply meant for such an end. He was situated on the spiritual platform, and being in his spiritual glory, he did not care for all these material insults. In other words, he completely understood that matter and spirit are separate, and he had no conception. He had no bodily conception. Thus, without being angry at anyone, he walked through the whole world alone. Text 31. Lord Rishabhadev's hands, feet, and chest were very long. His shoulders, face, and limbs were all very delicate and symmetrically proportioned. His mouth was beautifully decorated with his natural smile, and he appeared all the more lovely with his reddish eyes spread wide like the petals of a newly grown lotus flower covered with dew in the early morning. The irises of his eyes were so pleasing that they moved all the troubles of everyone who saw him, that they removed all the troubles of everyone who saw him. His forehead, ears, neck, nose, and all his other features were very beautiful. His gentle smile always made his face beautiful, so much so that he even attracted the hearts of married women. It was as though they had been pierced by arrows of Cupid. About his head was an abundance of curly, matted brown hair. His hair was disheveled because his body was dirty and had not been taken care of. He appeared as if he were haunted by a ghost. 32. When Lord Rishabhadev saw that the general populace was very antagonistic to his execution of mystic yoga, he accepted the behavior of a python in order to counteract their opposition. Thus he stayed in one place and laid down. While lying down, he ate and drank. He passed stool and urine and rolled in it. Indeed, he smeared his whole body with his own stool and urine so that opposing elements might not come and disturb him. Text 33. Because Lord Rishabhadev remained in that condition, the public did not disturb him, but no bad aroma emanated from his stool and urine. Quite the contrary, his stool and urine were so aromatic that they filled 80 miles of the countryside with a pleasant fragrance. Text 34. In this way, Lord Rishabhadev followed the behavior of cows, deers, and crows. Sometimes he moved or walked, and sometimes he sat down in one place. Sometimes he lay down, behaving exactly like cows, deers, and crows. In that way, he ate, drank, passed stool and urine, and cheated the people in this way. Text 35. O King Parikshit, just to show all the yogis the mystic process, Lord Rishabhadev, the plenary expansion of Lord Krishna, performed wonderful activities. Actually, he was the master of liberation and was fully absorbed in transcendental bliss, which increased 1,000-fold. Lord Krishna Vasudev, the son of Vasudev, is the original source of Lord Rishabhadev. There is no difference in their constitution, and consequently, Lord Rishabhadev awakened the loving symptoms of crying, laughing, and shivering. He was always absorbed in transcendental love. Due to this, all mystic powers automatically approached him, such as the ability to travel in outer space at the speed of mind, to appear and disappear, and to enter the bodies of others, and to see things far away. Thus, he could do all of this, and he did not exercise these powers.
Thank you, Mother Malati. Todd, you're next, chapter 6. These are long verses.
The activities of Lord Rishabhadev. Text 1. King Parikshit asked Sukadev Goswami, my dear Lord, for those who are completely pure in heart, knowledge is attained by the practice of bhakti yoga. An attachment for fruitive activity is completely burned to ashes. For such people, the power of mystic yoga automatically arises. They do not cause distress. Why then did Rishabhadev neglect them? Srila Sukadev Goswami replied, my dear king, you have spoken correctly. However, after capturing animals, a cunning hunter does not put faith in them, for they might run away. Similarly, those who are advanced in spiritual life do not put faith in the mind. Indeed, they always remain vigilant and watch the mind's action. Text 3. All the learned scholars have given their opinion. The mind is by nature very restless, and one should not make friends with it. If we place full confidence in the mind, it may cheat us at any moment. Even Lord Shiva became agitated on seeing the Mohini form of Lord Krishna, and Subhadri Muni also fell down from the mature stage of yoga perfection. Text 4. An unchaste woman is very easily carried away by paramours, and it sometimes happens that her husband is violently killed by her paramours. If the yogi gives his mind a chance and does not restrain it, his mind will give facility to enemies like lust, anger, and greed, and they will doubtlessly kill the yogi. Text 5. The mind is the root cause of lust, anger, pride, greed, lamentation, illusion, and fear. Combined, these constitute bondage to fruit of activity. What learned man would put faith in the mind? Text 6. Lord Rishabdev was the head of all kings and emperors within this universe, but assuming the dress and the language of an avadhuta, he acted as if dull and materially bound. Consequently, no one could observe his divine opulence. He adopted this behavior just to teach yogis how to give up the body. Nevertheless, he maintained his original position as a plenary expansion of Lord Vasudeva Krishna. Remaining always in this state, he gave up his pastimes as Lord Rishabdev within the material world. If following in the footsteps of Lord Rishabdev, one can give up his subtle body, there is no chance that one will accept a material body again. Text 7. Actually, Lord Rishabdev had no material body, but due to Yoga Maya, he considered his body material. And therefore, because he played like an ordinary human being, he gave up the mentality of identifying with it. Following this principle, he began to wander all over the world. While traveling, he came to the province of Karnataka in South India and passed through Konka, Vinca, and Kutaka. He had no plan to travel this way, but he arrived near Kutakala and entered a forest there. He placed stones within his mouth and began to wander through the forest naked and with his hair disheveled like a madman. Text 8. While he was wandering about, a wild forest fire began. The fire was caused by the friction of bamboos, which were being blown by the wind. In that fire, the entire forest near Kutakala and the body of Lord Rishabdev were burned to ashes. Text 9. Sukadev Goswami continues speaking to Maharaj Praksit. My dear king, the king of Konka, Vinca, Kutaka, whose name was Arhat, heard of the activities of Lord Rishabdev and, imitating Rishabdev's principles, introduced a new system of religion. Taking advantage of Kali Yuga, the age of sinful activity, King Arhat, being bewildered, gave up the Vedic principles, which are free from risk, and concocted a new system of religion opposed to the Vedas. That was the beginning of the Jain Dharma. Many other so-called religions followed this aesthetic principle system. Text 10. People who are lowest among men and bewildered by the illusory energy of the Supreme Lord will give up the original Varnas Ram Dharma and its rules and regulations. They will abandon bathing 3 times daily and worship in the Lord. Abandoning cleanliness and neglecting the Supreme Lord, they will accept nonsensical principles. Not regularly bathing and washing their mouths regularly, they will always remain unclean, and they will pluck out their hair. Following a concocted religion, they will flourish. During the age of Kali, people are more inclined to irreligious systems. Consequently, these people will naturally deride Vedic authority. The followers of Vedic authority, the Brahmanas, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the devotees. Text 11. Low-class people, due to their gross ignorance, introduced a system of religion that deviates from the Vedic principles. Following their own mental concoctions, they automatically fall down into the darkest regions of existence. Text 12. In this age of Kali, people are overwhelmed by the modes of passion and ignorance. Lord Rishabdev incarnated himself to deliver them from the clutches of Maya. Text 13. Learned scholars chant about the transcendental qualities of Lord Rishabdev in this way. Oh, this earthly planet contains 7 seas and many islands and lands. of which Bharatvarsa is considered the most pious. People of Bharatvarsa are accustomed to glorifying the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his incarnations as Lord Rishabdev and others. All these activities are very auspicious for the welfare of humanity. Text 14. Oh, what shall I say of the dynasty of Priyarata, which is pure and very much celebrated? In this dynasty, the Supreme Personality, the original personality of Godhead, descended as an incarnation and executed religious principles that could free one from the results of fruitive activity. Text 15. Who is that mystic yogi who can follow examples of Lord Rishabdev, even with his mind? Lord Rishabdev rejected all kinds of yogic perfections, which other yogis hanker to attain. Who is that yogi who can compare to Lord Rishabdev? Text 16. Sukadev Goswami continued. Lord Rishabdev is the master of all Vedic knowledge, human beings, demigods, cows, and brahmanas. I have already explained his pure transcendental activities, which will vanquish the sinful activities of all living entities. This narration of Lord Rishabdev's pastimes is the reservoir of all auspicious things. Whoever attentively hears or speaks of them, following the footsteps of the acharyas, will certainly attain unalloyed devotional service at the Lord's feet of Lord Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 17. Devotees always bathe themselves in devotional service in order to be relieved from the various tribulations of material existence. By doing this, the devotee enjoys supreme bliss, and liberation personified comes to serve them. Nonetheless, they do not accept that service, even if it is offered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. For the devotees, liberation, mukti, is very unimportant because, having attained the Lord's transcendental love and service, they have attained everything desirable and have transcended all material desires. Text 18. Sukadev Goswami continued. My dear Lord, the Supreme Person, Mukunda, is actually the maintainer of all the members of the Pandava and Yadu dynasties. He is your spiritual master, worshipper deity, friend, and the director of your activities. To say nothing of this, he sometimes serves your family as a messenger or servant. This means he works just as ordinary servants do. They engage in getting the Lord's favor, attain liberation from the Lord very easily, but he does not very easily give the opportunity to render direct service unto him. Text 19. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Rasadev, was full aware of his true identity. Therefore, he was self-sufficient, and he did not desire external gratification. There was no need for him to aspire for success, since he was complete in himself. Those who unnecessarily engage in bodily conceptions and create an atmosphere of materialism are always ignorant of their real self-interest. Out of his causeless mercy, Lord Rishabdev taught the self's real identity and the goal of life. We therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who appeared as Lord Rishabdev.
Thank you, Todd Prabhuji. Mother Vaishnavi, you're next, chapter 7, followed by 6 Shastra.
Okay. Chapter 7, the activities of King Bharata. Text 1. Shukadeva Goswami continued speaking to Maharaj Parikshit. My dear king, Bharat Maharaj was topmost devotee. Following the orders of his father, who had already decided to install him on the throne, he began to rule the earth accordingly. When Bharat Maharaj ruled the entire globe, he followed the orders of his father and married Panchajani, the daughter of Vishwarupa. Just as the false ego creates the subtle sense objects, Maharaj Bharat created 5 sons in the womb of Panchajani, his wife. These sons were named Sumati, Rashtrabhrita, Sudarshana, Avarna, and Dhumraketu. Text 3. Formerly, this planet was known as Ajnabhavarsha, but since Maharaja Bharata's reign, it has become known as Bharatvarsha. Text 4. Maharaj Bharat was a very learned and experienced king on earth. He perfectly ruled the citizens, being himself engaged in his own respective duties. Maharaj Bharat was as affectionate to the citizens as his father and grandfather had been. Keeping them engaged in their occupational duties, he ruled the earth. Text 5. With great faith, King Bharata performed various kinds of sacrifice. He performed the sacrifices known as Agnihotra, Darsha, Purnamasa, Chaturmasya, Pashu Yajna, wherein a horse is sacrificed, and Soma Yajna, wherein a kind of beverage is offered. Sometimes these sacrifices were performed completely and sometimes partially. In any way, in all the sacrifices and regulations of Chaturhotra, in all the sacrifices and regulations of Chaturhotra was strictly followed. In this way, Bharat Maharaj worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 6. After performing the preliminaries of various sacrifices, Maharaja Bharat offered the results in the name of religion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. In other words, he performed all the yajnas for the satisfaction of Lord Vasudeva, Krishna. Maharaja Bharat thought that since the demigods were different parts of Vasudeva's body, he controls those who are explained in the Vedic mantras. By thinking in this way, Maharaj Bharat was freed from all material contamination such as attachment, lust, and greed. When the priests were about to offer the sacrificial ingredients into the fire, Maharaja Bharat expertly understood how the offerings were made to different demigods was simply an offering to the different limbs of the Lord. For instance, Indra is the arm of Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Surya, sun, is his eye. Thus, Maharaj Bharat considered that the oblations offered to different demigods were actually offered to the different limbs of Vasudeva. Text 7. In this way, being purified by ritualistic sacrifices, the heart of Maharaj Bharat was completely uncontaminated. His devotional service unto Vasudeva, Lord Krishna, increased day after day. Lord Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, is the original personality of Godhead, manifest as the super soul, Paramatma, as well as the impersonal Brahman. Yogis meditate upon the localized Paramatma situated in the heart. Jnanis worship the impersonal Brahman as the supreme absolute truth, and devotees worship as Vasudeva, the supreme personality of Godhead, whose transcendental body is described in the Shastras. His body is decorated with Srivatsa, the Kaustubha jewel, and a flower garland, and his hands hold a conch shell, disc, club, and the lotus flower. Devotees like Narada always think of him within their heart. Text 8. Destiny fixed the time for Maharaj Bharat's enjoyment of material opulence at 1,000 times 10,000 years. When that period was finished, he retired from the family life and divided the wealth he had received from his forefathers among his sons. He left his parental home, the reservoir of all opulence, and started for Pulahashrama, which is situated in Haridwar. The Shaligram Shilas are obtainable there. Text 9. At Pulahashrama, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, out of his transcendental affection for his devotee, becomes visible to his devotee, satisfying his devotee's desires. In Pulahashrama, in Gandaki River, which is the best of all rivers, the Shaligram Shila, the marble pebbles, purify all those places. On each and every marble pebble, up and down, circles like navels are visible. Text 11. In the gardens of Pulaha Ashrama, Maharaja Bharat lived alone and collected variety of flowers, twigs, tulsi leaves. He also collected the water of Gandaki river as well as various roots, fruits, and bulbs. With these, he offered food to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vasudeva, and worshipping him, he remained satisfied. In this way, his heart was completely uncontaminated, and he did not have the least desire for material enjoyment. All material desires vanquished. In this steady position, he felt full satisfaction and was situated in devotional service. Text 12. That most exalted devotee, Maharaj Bharat, in this way engaged constantly in devotional service of the Lord. Naturally, his love for Vasudeva, Krishna, increased more and more and melted his heart. Consequently, he gradually lost all his attraction for regulative duties. The hairs of his body stood on end, and all the ecstatic bodily symptoms were manifest. Tears flowed from his eyes, so much so that he could not see anything. Thus, he constantly meditated on the reddish lotus feet of the Lord. At that time, his heart, which was like a lake, was filled with the water of ecstatic love. When his mind was immersed in that lake, he even forgot the regulative service to the Lord. Maharaja Bharat appeared to be very beautiful. He had a wealth of curly hair on his head and was wet from bathing 3 times daily. He dressed in a deer skin. He worshipped Lord Narayana, whose body was composed of golden effulgence and who resided within the sun. Maharaja Bharat worshipped Lord Narayana by chanting the hymns given in Rig Veda, and he recited the following verse as the sun rose. Text 14. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in pure goodness. He illuminates the entire universe and bestows all benedictions upon his devotees. The Lord has created this universe from his own spiritual potency. According to his desire, the Lord entered this universe as a super soul, and by virtue of his different potencies, he is maintaining all living entities desiring material enjoyment. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who is the giver of intelligence. So,
Thank you, Mother Vaishnavi. Mother Sikshastika, you're next.
Hare Krishna, Chapter 8, a description of the character of Bharat Maharaj. Text 1. Sri Sukadeva Goswami continued, My dear king, one day after finishing his morning duties, evacuating, urinating and bathing, Maharaj Bharat sat down on the bank of the river Gandaki for a few minutes and began chanting his mantra, beginning with Omkara. Text 2. O king, while Bharat Maharaja was sitting on the bank of the river, a doe, being very thirsty, came there to drink. Text 3. While the doe was drinking with great satisfaction, a lion, which was very close, roared very loudly. This was frightful to every living entity, and it was heard by the doe. Text 4. By nature, the doe was always afraid by being killed by others, and it was always looking about suspiciously when it heard the lion's tumultuous roar. It became very agitated. Looking here and there with the disturbed eyes, the doe, although it had not fully satisfied itself by drinking water, suddenly leaped across the river. 5. The doe was pregnant, and when it jumped out of fear, the baby deer fell from its womb and into the flowing water of the river. 6. Being separated from the flock and distressed by its miscarriage, the black doe, having crossed the river, was very much distressed. Indeed, it fell down in a cave and died immediately. 7. The great king Bharata, while sitting on the bank of the river, saw the small deer, bereft of its mother, floating down the river. Seeing this, he felt great compassion. Like a sincere friend, he lifted the infant deer from the waves and, knowing it to be motherless, brought it to his ashrama. Text 8. Gradually, Maharaja Bharata became very affectionate towards the deer. He began to raise it and maintain it by giving it grass. He was always careful to protect it from the attack of tigers and other animals, which is itched he pitted it, and in this way he always tried to keep it in a comfortable condition. He sometimes kissed it out of love. Being attached to raising the deer, Maharaja Bharata forgot the rules and regulations for the advancement of spiritual life, and he gradually forgot to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. After a few days, he forgot everything about his spiritual advancement. 9. The great King Maharaja Bharata began to think, alas, this helpless young deer, by the force of time, an agent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has now lost its relatives and friends and has taken shelter of me. It does not know anyone but me. As I have become its father, mother, brother, and relatives, this deer is thinking in this way, and it has full faith in me. It does not know anyone but me. Therefore, I should not be envious and think that for the deer, my own welfare will be destroyed. I should certainly raise, protect, gratify, and fondle it. When it has taken shelter with me, how can I neglect it? Even though the deer is disturbing my spiritual life, I realize that a helpless person who has taken shelter cannot be neglected. That would be a great fault. 10. Even though one is the renounced order, one who is advanced certainly feels compassion for suffering living entities. One should certainly neglect his own personal interests, although they may be very important to protect one who has surrendered. Text 11. Due to attachment of the deer, Maharaja Bharata lay down with it, walked about with it, bathed with it, and even ate with it. Thus his heart became bound to the deer in affection. Text 12. When Maharaja Bharata wanted to enter the forest to collect kusha grass, flowers, wood, leaves, fruits, roots, and water, he would fear that dogs, jackals, tigers, and other ferocious animals might kill the deer. He would therefore always take the deer with him, even entering the forest. When entering the forest, the animal would appear very attractive to Maharaja Bharata due to its childish behavior. Maharaj Bharata would even take the deer on his shoulder and carry it due to affection. His heart was so filled with great love for the deer that he would sometimes keep it on his lap or when sleeping on his chest. In this way, he felt great pleasure in fondling the animal. Text 14. When Maharaja Bharata was actually worshipping the Lord or was engaged in some ritualistic ceremony, although his activities were unfinished, he would still at intervals get up and see where the deer was. In this way, he would look for it, and when he could see that the deer was comfortably situated, his mind and heart would be very satisfied. And he would bestow his blessings upon the deer, saying, "My dear calf, may you be happy in all respects." Text 15. If Bharata Maharaja sometimes could not see the deer, his mind would be very agitated. He would become like a miser who, having obtained some riches and had lost them, and had then become very unhappy. When the deer was gone, he would be filled with anxiety and would lament due to separation. Thus he would become illusioned and speak as follows. Text 16. Bharata Maharaj would think, alas, the deer is now helpless. I am now very unfortunate, and my mind is like a cunning hunter, for it is always filled with cheating propensities and cruelty. The deer has put its faith in me, just as a good man who has a nature interest in good behavior forgets the misbehavior of a cunning friend and puts his faith in him. Although I have proved faithless, will this deer return and place its faith in me? Text 17. Alas, is it possible that I shall again see this animal protected by the Lord and fearless of tigers and other animals? Shall I again see him wandering in the gardens eating soft grass? 18. I don't know, but the deer might have been eaten by a wolf or a dog, or by the boars that flock together, or the tigers who travels alone. 19. Alas, when the sun rises, all suspicious things begin. Unfortunately, they have not begun for me. The sun god is the Vedas personified, but I am bereft of all Vedic principles. That sun god is now setting, yet the poor animal who trusted me since its mother died has not returned. 20. The deer is exactly like a prince. When will it return? When will it again display its personal activities, which are so pleasing? When will it again pacify a wonder heart like mine? I certainly but have no pious assets, otherwise the deer would have returned by now. Text 21. Alas, the small deer, while playing with me and seeing me feigning meditation with closed eyes, would circumambulate me due to anger rising from love, and it would fearfully touch me with the point of its soft horns, which felt like drops of water. Text 22. When I placed all the sacrificial ingredients on the kusha grass, the deer, when playing, would touch the grass with its teeth and thus pollute it. When I chastised the deer by pushing it away, it would immediately become fearful and sit down motionless, exactly like the son of a saintly person. Thus it would stop its play. Text 23. After speaking like a madman in this way, Maharaja Bharata got up and went outside. Seeing the footprints of the deer on the ground, he praised the footprints out of love, saying, "O unfortunate Bharata, your austerities and the penances are very insignificant compared to the penances and austerity undergone by this earth planet. Due to the earth's severe penances, the footprints of this deer, which are small, beautiful, and most auspicious and soft, are imprinted on the surface of this fortunate planet. This series of footprints show a person like me, who am bereaved due to loss of the deer, how the animal has passed through the forest and now I can regain my lost wealth. By these footprints, this land has become proper place of Brahmanas who desire heavenly planets or liberation to execute sacrifice to the demigods." Text 24. Maharaj Bharata continued to speak like a madman, seeing above his head and dark marks on the rising moon, which resembled a deer. He said, "Can it be that moon, who is so kind to an unhappy man, might also be kind upon my deer, knowing that it has strayed from a home and has become motherless? This moon has given the deer shelter near itself just to protect it from the fearful attack of a lion." 25. After perceiving the moon shine, Maharaj Bharata continued speaking like a crazy person. He said, "The dear son was so submissive and dear to me that due to its separation, I'm feeling separation from my own son. Due to the burning fever of this separation, I'm suffering as inflamed by a forest fire. My heart, which is like the lily of the land, is now burning. Seeing me so distressed, the moon is certainly splashing its shine nectar upon me, just as a friend throws water on another friend who has a high fever. In this way, the moon is bringing me happiness." Text 26. Sukadeva Goswami continued, "My dear king, in this way, Bharata Maharaja was overwhelmed by an uncontrollable desire which was manifest in the form of the deer. Due to the fruitive results of his past deeds, he fell down from the mystic yoga, austerity, and worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If it were not due to this past fruitive activity, how could he have been attracted to the deer after giving up the association of his own son and family, considering them stumbling block on the path of spiritual life? How could he show such uncontrollable affection for a deer? This was definitely due to his past karma. The king was so engrossed in pitying and maintaining the deer that he fell down from the spiritual activities. In due course of time, in some abominable death, which is compared to a venomous snake that enters the hole created by a mouse, situated itself before him. Text 27. At the time of death, the king saw that the deer was sitting by his side, exactly like his own son, and was lamenting his death. Actually, the mind of king was absorbed in the body of the deer, and consequently, like those bereft of Krishna consciousness, he left the world, the deer and his material body, and acquired by the body of a deer. However, there was one advantage. Although he lost his human body and received the body of a deer, he did not forget the incidents of his past life. Text 28. Although in the body of a deer, but the Maharaja, due to his rigid devotional service in his past life, could understand the cause of his birth in that body. Considering his past and present life, he constantly repeated his activities, speaking in the following way. Text 29. In the body of deer, Bharata Maharaja began to lament. What misfortune! I have fallen from the path of the self-realized. I gave up my real son, wife, and home to advance in spiritual life, and I took shelter in a solitary holy place in the forest. I became self-controlled and self-realized, and I engaged constantly in devotional service, hearing, thinking, chanting, worshipping, and remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. I was successful in my attempt, so much so that my mind was always absorbed in devotional service. However, due to my personal foolishness, my mind again became attached, this time to a deer. Now I have obtained the body of a deer and have fallen far from my devotional practices. Text 30. Although Bharata Maharaja received the body of a deer, by constant repentance, he became completely detached from all material things. He did not disclose these things to anyone, but he left his mother deer in a place known as Kalanjara mountain, where he was born. He again went to the forest of Shalagrama and to the ashrama of Pulasya and Pulaha. Text 31. Remaining in that ashrama, the great King Bharata Maharaja was now very carefully not to fall victim to bad association. Without disclosing his past to anyone, he remained in the ashrama and ate dry leaves only. He was not exactly alone, for he had the association of the super soul. In this way, he waited for death in the body of a deer. Bathing in that holy place, he finally gave up the body. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mr. Shastika. Lileshwari, you can read next.
Chapter 9, The Supreme Character of Jada. Text 1-2. Srila Sukadeva Goswami continued. My dear king, after giving up the body of a deer, Bharat Maharaj took birth in a very pure Brahmana family. There was a Brahmana who belonged to the dynasty of Angira. He was fully qualified with Brahmanical qualifications. He could control his mind and senses, and he had studied the Vedic literatures and other subsidiary literatures. He was expert in giving charity, and he was always satisfied, tolerant, very gentle, learned, and non-envious. He was self-realized and engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. He remained always in a trance. He had 9 equally qualified sons by his first wife, and by his second wife he begot twins, a brother and a sister, of which the male child was said to be the topmost devotee and foremost of saintly kings, Bharat Maharaj. This then is the story of the birth he took after giving up the body of a deer. Text 3. Due to his being especially gifted with the Lord's mercy, Bharat Maharaj could remember the incidents of his past life. Although he received the body of a Brahmana, he was still very much afraid of his relatives and friends who were not devotees. He was always very cautious of such association because he feared that he would again fall down. Consequently, he manifested himself before the public eye as a madman, dull, blind, and deaf, so that others would not try to talk to him. In this way, he saved himself from bad association. Within, he was always thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord and chanting the Lord's glories, which save one from the bondage of fruitive action. In this way, he saved himself from the onslaught of non-devotee associates. Text 4. The Brahmana father's mind was always filled with affection for his son, Jada Bharat Maharaj. Therefore, he was always attached to Jada Bharat. Because Jada Bharat was unfit to enter the Grihastha ashram, he simply executed the purificatory process up to the end of the Brahmacharya ashram. Although Jada Bharat was unwilling to accept his father's instructions, the Brahmana nonetheless instructed him in how to keep clean and how to wash, thinking that the son should be taught by the father. Text 5. Jada Bharat behaved before his father like a fool, despite his father's adequately instructing him in Vedic knowledge. He behaved in that way so that his father would know that he was unfit for instruction and would abandon the attempt to instruct him further. He would behave in a completely opposite way. Although instructed to wash his hands after evacuating, he would wash them before. Nonetheless, his father wanted to give him Vedic instructions during the spring and summer. He tried to teach him the Gayatri Mantra along with Omkara and Vyakriti, but after 4 months, his father still was not successful in instructing him. Text 6. The Brahmana father of Jada Bharat considered his son his heart and soul, and therefore he was very much attached to him. He thought it wise to educate his son properly, and being absorbed in this unsuccessful endeavor, he tried to teach his son the rules and regulations of Brahmacharya, including the execution of the Vedic vows, cleanliness, study of the Vedas, the regulative method, service to the spiritual master, and the method of offering a fire sacrifice. He tried his best to teach his son in this way, but all his endeavors failed. In his heart, he hoped that his son would be a learned scholar, but all his attempts were unsuccessful. Like everyone, this Brahmana was attached to his home, and he had forgotten that someday he would die. Death, however, was not forgetful. At the proper time, death appeared and took him away. Text 7. Thereafter, the Brahmana's younger wife, after entrusting her twin children, the boy and girl, to the elder wife, departed for Patiloka, voluntarily dying with her husband. Text 8. After the father died, the 9 stepbrothers of Jada Bharat, who considered Jada Bharat dull and brainless, abandoned the father's attempt to give Jada Bharat a complete education. The stepbrothers of Jada Bharat were learned in the 3 Vedas, the Rig Veda, Samaveda, and Yajurveda, which very much encouraged fruitive activity. The 9 brothers were not at all spiritually enlightened in devotional service to the Lord. Consequently, they could not understand the highly exalted position of Jada Bharat. Text 9 and 10. Degraded men are actually no better than animals. The only difference is that animals have 4 legs and such men have only 2. These 2-legged animalistic men used to call Jada Bharat mad, dull, deaf and dumb. They mistreated him, and Jada Bharat behaved for them like a madman who was deaf, blind, or dull. He did not protest or try to convince them that he was not so. If others wanted him to do something, he acted according to their desires. Whatever food he could acquire by begging or by wages, and whatever came of its own accord, be it a small quantity, palatable, stale, or tasteless, he would accept and eat. He never ate anything for sense gratification because he was already liberated from the bodily conception, which induces one to accept palatable or unpalatable food. He was full in the transcendental consciousness of devotional service, and therefore he was unaffected by the dualities arising from the bodily conception. Actually, his body was as strong as a bull's, and his limbs were very muscular. He didn't care for winter or summer, wind or rain, and he never covered his body at any time. He lay on the ground and never smeared oil on his body or took a bath. Because his body was dirty, his spiritual effulgence and knowledge were covered. Just as the splendor of a valuable gem is covered by dirt, he only wore a dirty loin cloth and his sacred thread, which was blackish. Understanding that he was born in a Brahmana family, people would call him a Brahma Bandhu and other names. Being thus insulted and neglected by materialistic people, he wandered here and there. Text 11. Jada Bharat used to work only for food. His stepbrothers took advantage of this and engaged him in agricultural field work in exchange for some food, but actually he did not know how to work very well in the field. He did not know where to spread dirt or where to make the ground level or even uneven. His brothers used to give him broken rice, oiled cakes, the chaff of rice, worm-eaten grains,
and burned grains that had stuck to the pot, but he gladly accepted all this as if it were nectar. He did not hold any grudges and ate all this very gladly. Text 12. At this time, being desirous of obtaining a son, a leader of dacoits who came from a Shudra family wanted to worship the goddess Bhadrakali by offering her in sacrifice a dull man who is considered no better than an animal. Text 13. The leader of the dacoits captured a man animal for sacrifice, but he escaped, and the leader ordered his followers to find him. They ran in different directions but could not find him. Wandering here and there in the middle of the night, covered by dense darkness, they came to a paddy field where they saw the exalted son of the Angira family, Jadabharat, who was sitting in an elevated place guarding the field against the attacks of deer and wild pigs. Text 14. The followers and servants of the dacoit chief considered Jadabharat to possess qualities quite suitable for a man animal, and they decided that he was a perfect choice for sacrifice. Their faces bright with happiness, they bound him with ropes and brought him to the temple of the goddess Kali. Text 15. After this, all the thieves, according to their imaginative ritual for killing animalistic men, bathed Jadabharat, dressed him in new clothes, decorated him with ornaments befitting an animal, smeared his body with scented oils, and decorated him with tilak, sandalwood pulp, and garlands. They fed him sumptuously and then brought him before the goddess Kali, offering her incense, lamps, garlands, parched grain, newly grown twigs, sprouts, fruits, and flowers. In this way, they worshipped the deity before killing the man animal, and they vibrated songs and prayers and played drums and bugles. Jadabharat was then made to sit down before the deity. Text 16. At this time, one of the thieves, acting as the chief priest, was ready to offer the blood of Jadabharat, whom they imagined to be an animal man, to the goddess Kali to drink as liquor. He therefore took up a very fearsome sword, which was very sharp, and consecrating it by the mantra of Bhadrakali, raised it to kill Jadabharat. Text 17. All the rogues and thieves who had made arrangements for the worship of goddess Kali were low-minded and bound to the modes of passion and ignorance. They were overpowered by the desire to become very rich. Therefore, they had the audacity to disobey the injunctions of the Vedas, so much so that they were prepared to kill Jadabharat, the self-realized soul born in a Brahmana family. Due to their envy, these dacoits brought him before the goddess Kali for sacrifice. Such people are always addicted to envious activities, and therefore they dared to try to kill Jadabharat. Jadabharat was the best friend of all living entities. He was no one's enemy, and he was always absorbed in meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was born of a good Brahmana father, and killing him was forbidden, even though he might have been an enemy or aggressive person. In any case, there was no reason to kill Jadabharat, and the goddess Kali could not bear this. She could immediately understand that these sinful dacoits were about to kill a great devotee of the Lord. Suddenly, the deity's body burst asunder, and the goddess Kali personally emerged from it in a body burning with an intense and intolerable effulgence. Text 18. Intolerant of the offenses committed, the infuriated goddess Kali flashed her eyes and displayed her fierce curved teeth. Her reddish eyes glowed and she displayed her fearsome features. She assumed a frightening body as if she were prepared to destroy the entire creation. Leaping violently from the altar, she immediately decapitated all the rogues and thieves with the very sword with which they had intended to kill Jadabharat. She then began to drink the hot blood that flowed from the necks of the beheaded rogues and thieves, as if this blood were liquor. Indeed, she drank this intoxicant with her associates, who were witches and female demons. Becoming intoxicated with this blood, they all began to sing very loudly and dance as though prepared to annihilate the entire universe. At the same time, they began to play with the heads of the rogues and thieves, tossing them about as if they were balls. Text 19. When an envious person commits an offense before a great personality, he is always punished in the way mentioned above. Text 20. Sukadev Goswami then said to Maharaj Parikshit, O Vishnudatta, those who already know that the soul is separate from the body, who are liberated from the invincible knot in the heart, who are always engaged in welfare activities for all living entities, and who never contemplate harming anyone, are always protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who carries his disc, the Sudarshana Chakra, and acts as supreme time to kill the demons and protect his devotees. The devotees always take shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord. Therefore, at all times, even if threatened by decapitation, they remain unagitated. For them, this is not at all wonderful.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, devotees. We'll stop at this time because we are already like 15 minutes over time. We'll adjust the verses for the next times because these are very, very long verses. So really thank you for your patience. Thank you, devotees, for participating.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.
Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki jai.
Jai.